Okay, so hello. I've been sitting with this starting point for hours on end, yesterday and today. This video was supposed to be out yesterday. Let's go. Okay, so the first thing we do is nmap and then SV and SC for version and script. I don't think we need both of them. I'm not sure, but I just do it. I do it every time. IP address and we wait. Yeah, and before we do the nmap scan, of course we need to connect to the VPN. That's like the first thing we do. So we have to do sudo for it to work, and then double tab. Here we have my very unorganized files. And now we are connected, as we can see here. We do new tab and then we do the IP address again. SV and SC for version and script. And then IP address. Port 22 and 80 are open. SSH and HTTP. So what TCP ports does nmap identify as open? And that's 22 and 80, separated by a comma here. And then what software is running the service listening on the HTTP port identified in the first question? Port 80. What software? We can see here that is Node.js. And we can also see on the same line that it's Express middleware. But the question is asking to use Wappalyzer, so then we have to go to the website. HTTP, and I called it bike.htb. So here we see the website, and then we go to Wappalyzer, and here we see web frameworks, and it is Express. And also it says Node.js for programming language. And then the next question is, what is the name of the vulnerability we test for by submitting 7x7? We can Google that. So I just Googled the payload. Oh yeah, we have to do that one. Then we see it's server-side template injection. And then what is the templating engine being used within Node.js? We can try this payload just to see what happens. And here we can see that it is handlebars. We can also Google that. So it says EJS, pug, and handlebars, based on the number of stars that we can see when we're going to answer, and the fact that it is a S on the end, then it's going to be handlebars. Now, the next question is, what is the name of the Burp Suite tab used to encode text? The answer to this one I'm not going to find, because I don't use Burp Suite. I use Kaido, but I'm gonna try and show either way. We press forwarding because then we are queuing, which means that when we send a HTTP request by hitting enter in the search bar, we can pick up what we sent and modify it and then send and then just forward it. That's why it says forwarding when it's green. So now it's queuing, which means that everything I do now will be caught in here. I will do this, submit this again, and now we see that it's just pending. It won't like refresh or move on, and that's because in Kaido we are now seeing here is our HTTP requests, and here we see the email we submitted. In order to send special characters in our payload in an HTTP request, we'll encode the payload. What type of encoding do we use? And here we see URL encode. So that's URL. When we use a payload from Hactrix to try to run system commands, we get an error back. What is not defined in the response error. So what we can do then is we can do SSTI payloads Hactrix. Yeah, okay, so we're going to see if we can find this payload. Okay, here it is. When we use a payload from Hactrix to try to run system commands, we get an error back. I'm gonna paste this payload and then mark it up again and convert URL encode. And then I'm gonna press... Oh no, I'm not. Frick. I forgot something. You're not really supposed to do anything here. You're just going to send this to replay, the default collection, and then here we're supposed to do what I was just about to do. Convert, replace URL encode, and then we send, and we get an error which is require is not defined. So the answer is require. And now what variable is the name of the top level scope? That is global. And now we're going to try to exploit this, trying to modify this here. Okay, so we're going to modify it a little bit. What we're going to do is we're gonna decode this again, and then we are going to modify this line, and we're going to delete almost everything, and then we do process, no, return process. And that's it. And then we will encode it again. And then we send it. And now we see no errors. And we also see here that it says object, object, and object process. Which means that it can actually access both functions. So we're on the right way, we're on the right path. So what I'm going to try now is... There is a module we can use, which we can add on process, which is main module. And now we check if there is any errors here. So we send it again, and here we can see that we still are able to access both of them, which is great because that's what we want. But now we are going a little bit further, adding the child process again and the require, of course. So it's going to be return process.main module.require, and then parentheses, and in quotation marks I'm going to put child process. So yeah, it's still object, which is still what we want. And now we are going to start trying to run system commands. So we do after child process, we do .exec sync, and then parentheses and quotation marks, and inside we're doing who am I, encoding this again, and then we see here that we are root. So now we actually have full control of this machine. And now we are doing even more modifications. We are going to see what is in our root directory. And how we do that is, instead of who am I, we do ls root. And here we can see that we have 3 different. So we have 2 directories and 1 file, and the file is flag.txt. So naturally what we are going to do now, and this is going to be the last modification. So we do ls root, yeah, and then instead of ls we do cat, and then root slash flag.txt. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but yeah, I'm doing it this way. And here is our flag. Copy, or I have already submitted it, but yeah. So by exploiting this vulnerability, we find out that the name of the user is root, and then we submit our flag. And I also ranked this at a hard, because goddamn, this was frustrating. I spent all of yesterday and today just trying to understand how I would find root or the user, which when I look back now, I don't get why that was so hard to find out. But you know, that's just how it is sometimes. Then I'll see you next time. Bye!